She was just trying to get home before the storm hit. A single mother with groceries in one hand, and her son's permission slip in the other. But when she found a man bleeding out in an alley, everything changed. By morning, 200 men in black suits would be standing outside her door, and the life she'd fought so hard to build would never be the same. Before we dive into this story of blood, loyalty, and the strangest debt ever paid, make sure to subscribe, because some acts of kindness don't just save lives, they rewrite them entirely. Now, let me tell you what really happened. The rain came down like bullets that November night in South Philadelphia. The kind of cold, angry rain that made you question every life choice that led you to be outside in it. Claire Mitchell hurried down Carpenter Street, grocery bags cutting into her palms, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles that had become small lakes. She had exactly 12 minutes to get home before her shift at the hospital started. 12 minutes to drop off the eggs that were probably cracked by now, kiss her 7-year-old son, Ethan, goodbye, and pretend she wasn't bone-tired from living 3 lives at once. Single mother, night shift nurse, and the ghost of who she used to be before the war took pieces of her she'd never get back. Combat medic, that's what her discharge papers said. What they didn't say was how you never really stop being one. How your ears never stop listening for sounds that don't belong. How your body moves before your brain catches up when something's wrong. That's why she heard it. The wet, ragged breathing coming from the alley between the shuttered pawn shop and the Chinese restaurant that had been closed for health violations twice. Most people would have kept walking. Smart people definitely would have. Claire's feet had already changed direction, her training overriding common sense like it always did. The man was crumpled against a dumpster, one hand pressed to his side where blood was seeping through his expensive suit. And it was expensive. Even in the dim light of a flickering street lamp, Claire could tell this wasn't some synthetic blend from a discount store. This was tailored wool, Italian leather shoes, a watch that probably cost more than her car. Not that her car was worth much. His face was gray, lips tinged blue. Late 50s, maybe 60. Distinguished looking in that way men with power always seemed to be. The kind of face you'd see in the society pages. Or maybe a courtroom, depending on which side of the law he called home. She dropped her groceries. The eggs definitely cracked this time. "Sir," she said, kneeling beside him, her hands already assessing the wound. Gunshot, through and through, but the exit wound was messy. "Sir, can you hear me?" His eyes opened, dark, sharp, calculating even in crisis. He looked at her with the kind of intensity that made her think of predators and prey, though she couldn't quite tell which one she was. "Leave," he whispered. His voice had gravel in it, authority, even when barely audible. "Not safe. You'll be dead in 20 minutes if I leave," Claire said, already pulling off her jacket. "So unless you've got a better plan, shut up and let me work." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. Hard to tell with men like this. Men who probably weren't used to being told to shut up by women in thrift store jackets. She worked fast. Pressure on the wound. Checking for exit. Assessing blood loss. Her hands moved with muscle memory. Steady despite the rain. Despite the sirens in the distance. Despite every logical part of her brain screaming that this was a terrible idea. "What's your name?" she asked, mostly to keep him conscious. "Vincent," he said, after a pause. "Vincent Harris." The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it, like it should mean something, told her everything she needed to know about who this man thought he was. "Well, Vincent Harris, I'm Claire, and I'm going to need you to stay awake and keep pressure here while I call 911. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. For a man losing blood. "No hospitals. No police. You'll die. Then I die." His grip didn't loosen. "But you live. They find me with you. You don't." Claire stared at him. At this stranger who was either delusional from blood loss or telling her a truth she really didn't want to know. She thought about Ethan, about the mac and cheese he was probably burning right now, because he insisted he was old enough to use the stove, about the permission slip for the field trip she'd forgotten to sign, about all the small, ordinary pieces of their small, ordinary life. And then she thought about the Hippocratic Oath, about the soldiers she'd saved in tents, made of canvas and hope, about the fact that leaving a man to bleed out in an alley wasn't something she knew how to do, even when common sense said she should. My apartment's 4 blocks from here, she heard herself say. Can you walk? Vincent Harris smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who'd just confirmed something he suspected about the world, that there were still fools in it, compassionate, stubborn fools. I can walk, he said. Getting him there was less walking and more controlled falling with direction. Claire supported most of his weight, her shoulder screaming under the burden, her breath coming in sharp gasps that fogged in the cold air. They moved through shadows, avoiding the main streets, Vincent directing their path with whispered instructions that suggested he knew these alleys better than any law-abiding citizen should. By the time they reached her building, a converted row house with stairs that groaned and walls so thin you could hear the neighbors' entire lives, Claire was fairly certain she'd just made the worst decision of her life. She got him inside, up the stairs, past Mrs. Chen's door, where the smell of ginger and the sound of a television game show leaked out, into her apartment, where Ethan looked up from his homework with wide eyes. Mom? His voice was small, uncertain. Ethan, baby, I need you to go to your room, Claire said, her voice steady. Despite everything, right now, don't come out until I say. But now, he went. Because he was a good kid, because he'd learned early that when his mother used that tone, you didn't argue. The door clicked shut behind him, and Claire heard the telltale sound of him pressing his ear against it anyway. She got Vincent onto the couch, the old plaid monstrosity that had come with the apartment and was probably older than both of them combined. She worked by lamplight, her movements efficient, cleaning the wound, checking for fragments, stitching with the emergency kit she kept, because old habits die hard, and sometimes they save lives. Vincent watched her the entire time, silent now, studying her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. You've done this before, he said finally. Army, combat medic, 2 tours. She didn't look up from her work. You've been shot before, more times than I'd been married. He winced as she pulled a stitch tight. And I've been married 3 times. Sounds like you're bad at both getting shot and picking wives. He laughed, actually laughed, which made him wince, which made him curse, which made Claire smile despite everything. There was something almost human about him in that moment, something that reminded her that monsters are still made of flesh and blood. Who shot you? She asked. Someone who forgot the rules. What rules? The ones that kept men like me alive long enough to get old. Claire tied off the final stitch, bandaged the wound, gave him antibiotics from the bottle she wasn't supposed to have but did. Anyway, she sat back on her heels and looked at him properly for the first time. Are you going to bring trouble to my door, Vincent Harris? He met her eyes. That same sharp, calculating gaze. Something that might have been respect, or might have been the beginning of debt. I'm going to make sure trouble never finds your door again, he said. It sounded like a promise, or a threat. With men like Vincent Harris, Claire was learning. Those 2 things were often the same. She let him sleep on the couch that night, checked his vitals every 2 hours, like he was any other patient, made Ethan breakfast, and sent him to school with the signed permission slip and instructions not to tell anyone about their house guest. Not that he knew what to tell. She'd said Vincent was an old friend from the service. Kids believe what you tell them when you say it with enough conviction. By the time she came back from the school drop-off, Vincent was awake, sitting up, looking at her apartment, with the kind of attention that made her nervous. Taking in the second-hand furniture, the water stain on the ceiling from the leak upstairs, the picture of Ethan on the fridge, gap-toothed and grinning. "You live alone?" he asked. "Me and my son. His father didn't survive the transition back to civilian life." It was the truth, just not all of it. The whole truth included words like PTSD and substance abuse. And the night she'd had to choose between staying and protecting Ethan. Some truths don't need to be spoken out loud to be understood. Vincent nodded slowly. "You have people? Family? We're each other's family. That's a dangerous way to live." Claire poured coffee, handed him a cup. "Says the man I pulled out of an alley bleeding from a gunshot wound." "Touché." They sat in silence for a moment. The morning light, coming through her kitchen window, made everything look softer, gentler, made it easy to pretend this was normal. Just two people drinking coffee. Not a nurse and a man who probably had more blood on his hands than in his body. "I should go," Vincent said finally. "Before I bring my problems here." "Too late for that." Claire's voice was quiet. "The moment I stopped in that alley, your problems became mine. That's how this works, isn't it? That's why you didn't want the hospital." Vincent studied her over his coffee cup. "You're smarter than you look." "I look pretty smart." "You look like someone who saves people without asking if they deserve it." "Everyone deserves not to bleed out in an alley." "Not everyone." His voice had gone hard, but I appreciate the sentiment. He left 20 minutes later. A black car appeared as if summoned by thought alone. Two men in suits helped him down the stairs with a gentleness that suggested they'd done this before. Vincent paused at the door, looked back at Claire. "I owe you a debt," he said. "You don't owe me anything. In my world, life debts aren't optional." He smiled that dangerous smile again. "You'll understand soon enough." The car drove away. Claire stood in her doorway, watching it disappear, and felt the first real tremor of fear. Not because of what had happened, but because of what was coming. She could feel it in the air like the pressure drop before a storm. Something had shifted. Some invisible line had been crossed. She just didn't know yet how right she was. The first sign came 2 days later. Claire was walking home from the grocery store. Again, because apparently that's all she ever did in this neighborhood. This time, she had all the ingredients for Ethan's birthday cake. He was turning 8 in 3 days. 8 years old, and already too serious for his age. Too aware of how hard his mother worked to keep them afloat. She was thinking about frosting colors when she noticed the car, black sedan, tinted windows, following her at a crawl 3 blocks back. When she turned, it turned. When she stopped, it stopped. Amateur hour surveillance, really. Like they wanted her to know they were there. Claire's heart rate kicked up, but she kept walking. Steady pace, no panic. That's what they taught you in the service. Panic gets you killed. Awareness keeps you alive. She took a longer route home. Through the park, past the playground where Ethan liked to swing so high. He said he could see the river. The car followed the whole way. When she finally reached her building, she turned and looked directly at it. The window rolled down. A young man, maybe 25, with slicked back hair and a suit that tried too hard to look expensive. He smiled. It wasn't friendly. "Mrs. Mitchell," he called out. "My employer would like a word. Tell your employer I make house calls to alleys, not social visits to strange cars." The smile didn't falter. "He thought you might say that. He also thought you might reconsider when you think about your son." The grocery bag slipped from her hand. Apples rolled across the sidewalk like small planets escaping orbit. "What did you just say?" "Ethan." "Right. Sweet kid. Wears the blue backpack with the rocket ships. Gets dropped off at school every morning at 7:45. Claire's vision tunneled. That old familiar feeling from the desert, the one that came right before the shooting started. "If you go anywhere near my son, we're not threatening him, Mrs. Mitchell." The man's voice was almost gentle, which made it worse. "We're protecting him. There's a difference. See, you saved someone important, someone with enemies, and those enemies might think the best way to hurt him is through the people he owes. People like you." I didn't ask for protection. No one ever does. The window started rolling up. But you have it anyway. Courtesy of Vincent Harris. Try not to do anything stupid like calling the police. They can't help you. We can. The car drove away. Claire stood on the sidewalk, hands shaking, rage and fear mixing into something toxic. She gathered her scattered groceries and went inside. Called the school. Confirmed Ethan was still in class. Safe. For now. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table with cold coffee and warm rage, watching the street below. And sure enough, there it was. A different black car. Different men. Same message. You're being watched. You're being guarded. You're no longer in control of your own life. She'd felt this way once before. In the desert, when the orders came down, and all you could do was follow them, or die trying to fight. She'd hated it then. She hated it now. But at least in the desert, she'd signed up for it. Volunteered. This was conscription by compassion. The next morning, she did something stupid. She called the number Vincent had left on her counter before he left, written on the back of what looked like a business card but just said VH, with 10 digits below it. He answered on the second ring. Claire, call off your dogs. Good morning to you too. I'm serious, Vincent. The surveillance, the veiled threats, the casual mentions of my son's schedule. End it. Now. There was a pause. The men watching you aren't mine. Claire's blood went cold. What? My men are watching the men watching you. His voice was calm, matter of fact, like he was discussing the weather. I told you. Life debt. The people who shot me know I survived. They know someone helped me. And my lieutenant Mark Russo. He's not a man who leaves loose ends. He'll come for you eventually. Unless I make it clear that you're untouchable. By making me a target, by making you mine. I'm not anyone's anything. In your world maybe. In mine, you became mine the moment you stopped to help. That's how this works, Claire. You save a life, you own it. I owe you mine, which means I own yours now too. Debt flows both ways. Claire wanted to scream, or throw the phone, or go back in time and walk past that alley like a sensible person. Instead, she said, very quietly, I want to meet, face to face. We're going to set some ground rules. Vincent laughed. You want to negotiate with me? I want to make sure my son grows up. If that means negotiating with the devil himself, hand me the contract. Another pause, longer this time. When Vincent spoke again, his voice had changed. Softer, almost respectful. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., there's a cafe on Passyunk. Maria's. Come alone. I'm bringing my stun gun. Bring whatever makes you feel safe. But Claire, the men who want you dead won't be stopped by a stun gun. They'll be stopped by me. Remember that. He hung up. Claire sat in her kitchen as the sun came up, watching the black car, watching her building, and wondered at what point acts of mercy become acts of war. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to find out. Maria's cafe was the kind of place that shouldn't exist anymore, but did anyway, defying gentrification through sheer force of will, and the best cannoli in South Philadelphia. Claire arrived 15 minutes early. Old habit. She took a table in the back, where she could see both doors, and ordered coffee. She wouldn't drink. Vincent arrived exactly on time. He moved differently now, not like a man who'd been shot 5 days ago. The suit was different too, charcoal gray, impeccable. He looked like someone's distinguished grandfather. The kind who'd slip you money for ice cream and tell stories about the old neighborhood, right up until you looked in his eyes. He sat across from her, ordered espresso without looking at the menu, waited until the waitress left before speaking. You look angry. Perceptive, Claire said. I like you, Claire Mitchell. You have spine. Not many people talk to me the way you do. Most people you talk to aren't being surveilled like political dissidents. Vincent smiled. Is that what we're calling it? What would you call it? Insurance. Against what? Against my lieutenant deciding your leverage. He sipped his espresso, calm as Sunday morning. Mark Russo. He's young, ambitious, and he has the common sense of a rabid dog. He shot me because he thought I was weak. Old, past my prime. He's wrong, but by the time I prove it, he'll have hurt people. People I care about. People I owe. I didn't ask to be on that list. No, but you're on it anyway. Vincent leaned forward. Here's what you need to understand. In my world, there are rules, old rules, sacred rules. One of them is this: you pay your debts, always. A man who doesn't is a man who doesn't survive. I owe you my life. That means your life is now as valuable to me as my own. More valuable, actually, because I'm old, and you have a son to raise. Claire felt something crack in her chest. Don't you dare use my son as... I'm not using him as anything. I'm telling you the truth. You saved me. That little boy has a mother because of your choice. That matters. It matters to me in ways you can't understand because you're not from my world. But trust me when I say, in my world, that debt is absolute. They sat in silence. The cafe buzzed around them. Normal people, having normal conversations about normal things. None of them knowing that at the corner table, a single mother and a crime boss were negotiating the price of salvation. What do you want from me? Claire asked finally. Nothing. Bullshit. Vincent laughed. Genuine this time. You really are remarkable. Most people are terrified of me. You're just angry. I was a combat medic in Kandahar. I'd been shot at by people who actually scared me. You're just inconvenient. His smile faded. Mark will come for you. Maybe not today. Maybe not next week. But he will come. And when he does, I need you to trust that my people will keep you safe. That's all I'm asking. Trust. From a man I don't know who runs an organization I want nothing to do with. Yes. Claire looked at him. Really looked. Past the expensive suit and the calculating eyes. At the man who'd been bleeding in an alley. Who'd told her to leave even as he was dying. Who'd said her name like it mattered. Fine, she said. But if anyone touches my son, if anyone so much as looks at him wrong, debt or no debt, I will find a way to make you regret every choice that led you to my door. Are we clear? Crystal. Good. She stood. And Vincent, next time you need medical attention, find an actual hospital. She walked out, didn't look back. Missed the way Vincent watched her go with something like admiration in his eyes. Something that might have been the beginning of respect, or the beginning of something more dangerous. 3 days later, on Ethan's 8th birthday, while Claire was at work and her neighbor Mrs. Chen was watching him, Mark Russo made his move. The call came at 11 p.m. Claire was in the middle of changing an IV when her phone buzzed. Mrs. Chen's number. Her stomach dropped before she even answered. Claire. Mrs. Chen's voice was shaking. Claire, men came. They took Ethan. They said to tell you that Mark Russo wants to meet alone, or you'll never see your boy again. The world went silent, then exploded. Claire doesn't remember the drive. Later she'll try to piece it together and fail. She remembers her hands on the wheel, remembers running red lights, remembers the animal sound that came out of her throat that wasn't quite human. The address they'd given, Mrs. Chen, was a warehouse by the docks. Of course it was, because men like Mark Russo learned everything they knew from bad movies and worse instincts. She pulled up to find exactly what she expected. Empty parking lot, rusted doors, the smell of river water and industrial decay, and standing by those doors, 2 men in suits that didn't quite fit. Claire got out of her car, walked toward them with her hands visible. No weapons, just a mother and her rage. They searched her anyway, took her phone, led her inside where Mark Russo sat on a folding chair like it was a throne, and there, zip-tied to a support beam, was Ethan, her baby, her whole world, eyes wide with fear, but trying so hard to be brave, to be the strong boy she taught him to be. Mrs. Mitchell. Mark stood. He was younger than Vincent, handsome in a cruel way, the kind of man who'd hurt you and smile while doing it. So nice of you to join us. Claire didn't look at him, just at Ethan. You okay, baby? Mom. Shut up, kid. Mark's voice was sharp, then back to Claire, smooth as oil. Here's how this works. You're going to call Vincent Harris. Tell him to meet you here, alone. And when he shows up, well, let's just say the old man's going to learn what happens when you get soft. I don't have my phone. Use mine. He held it out, smiling. Claire took it, looked at the number on the screen, looked at her son, made a choice. No, Mark's smile faltered. Excuse me. I said no. You want Vincent? Go get him yourself. I'm not bait. I'm not leverage. I'm a mother. And you just made the worst mistake of your short, stupid life. The slap came fast, split her lip. She tasted copper. Didn't fall. Wouldn't give him the satisfaction. You're going to make that call, Mark said, or I'm going to hurt your kid. Claire smiled, blood on her teeth. You're going to die tonight. Bold words for someone tied up. He gestured to his men. They moved forward. That's when the lights went out. Not flickered, not dimmed. Went completely black, like someone had flipped a switch on the entire grid. In the darkness, Claire heard it. The sound of doors opening, multiple doors, and footsteps, lots of them. When the lights came back on, emergency generators kicking in with weak yellow light, the warehouse wasn't empty anymore. It was full. 20, 30, 40 men, all in black suits, all with weapons drawn, and at the front of them, looking like death in Armani, was Vincent Harris. Mark, his voice echoed. You really are as stupid as I thought. What happened next happened fast. Mark's men reached for weapons. Vincent's were faster. Shots fired. Bodies dropped. Claire threw herself over Ethan, shielding him with her body the way she'd shielded soldiers in the desert. When the shooting stopped, the silence was deafening. Claire looked up. Mark was on his knees, hands raised, surrounded. His men were either dead or disarmed. Vincent stood over him, like judgment itself. You broke the rules, Vincent said quietly. The old rules, sacred rules. You don't touch family. You don't touch children. And you never ever touch someone under protection. She's nobody, Mark spat. She's somebody I owe. That makes her untouchable. That makes her sacred. And you stupid boy, you just signed your death warrant. Vincent raised his gun. Claire closed her eyes, waited for the sound, but what came instead was Vincent's voice, tired and old. Get him out of my sight. Put him on a plane to somewhere that isn't here. If he ever comes back, kill him. Claire looked up, stunned. Vincent met her eyes. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or mercy. Cut the boy loose, Vincent ordered. Someone did. Ethan ran to his mother, and Claire held him like she'd never let go, because she almost hadn't been able to, because the worst thing she could imagine had almost happened, because this world of violence and debt had almost taken the only thing that mattered. Vincent approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. I'm sorry. This should never have happened. Claire looked at him. This man who'd kept his word, who'd saved them, who'd shown mercy when he didn't have to. You kept us alive. I kept my promise. There's a difference. He crouched down to Ethan's level. You're a brave boy. Your mother's proud of you. I can tell. Ethan nodded, still shaking. Vincent stood, looked at Claire. The debt is paid. You're free, both of you. New identities, if you want them. New city, new life. Whatever you need, just say the word. Why? Because you saved my life, expecting nothing in return. The least I can do is give you yours back. 2 days later, Claire and Ethan stood in front of a small house in Oregon, paid for, furnished, untraceable. A fresh start in a place where no one knew their names or their history. Mrs. Chen had cried when they said goodbye. Promised to visit, probably wouldn't. That's how clean breaks work. As Claire unlocked the front door, Ethan looked up at her. Mom, are the bad men really gone? She thought about Vincent, about life debts and old rules, about how one act of compassion had pulled her into a world she never wanted to see, and somehow delivered her to the other side intact. Yeah, baby, she said, they're really gone. It wasn't entirely true, but it was true enough. And in this new life, in this new place, maybe truth could be whatever they needed it to be. Behind them, on the quiet street of their quiet neighborhood, a black car sat idling. Inside, one of Vincent's men kept watch, would keep watching, because some debts are never fully paid, some protections last forever, and some acts of compassion echo longer than anyone expects. If this story moved you, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below. Your stories matter just as much as the ones we tell. And if you'd like more tales about unexpected mercy, dangerous debts, and the price of doing the right thing, hit that subscribe button. We'll be here waiting to share the next one with you. Thank you for spending your time with us today. May you never have to choose between compassion and safety. But if you do, may you choose as wisely as Claire.